This particular podcast is to teach, just to provide an introduction into how to teach geomat dance in the high school setting during physical education classes. It will look at three different components. First, general teaching guidelines for teaching geomat or rhythmic movement activities. Many of these also can apply to group exercise. Also some basic geomat patterns that you can teach as progressive dance steps, and then some strategies for assessing student learning when teaching geomat during a physical education setting. So one of the first things to look at is some general overall concepts on how to teach geomats. And that has to do with how do you design effective sequences so that student learning takes place, also that students experience success. And one of the key things to do that is to establish all of your sequences in patterns of 8 counts. And so each step that you design, whatever the sequence being on the geomat pattern, it should be in a sequence of 8. If you use a 4-count step, it's repeated twice to make it an 8-count, but everything should be in patterns of 8 counts. Second thing is, when you set up patterns, come up with a base step, a step that will repeat itself throughout the course of your dance, that will be repeated after each new step. And so, for example, you'd have a base step, a new pattern, base step, a new pattern, base step, a new pattern. One of the reasons for doing this is that students are able then, if they struggle with the new pattern, they can get back on track with the base step before the next pattern takes place. It allows them to get back on track and experience success as they develop the skills for achieving the new steps as you add them throughout your sequence. So next thing is music selection. Be sure to select music that have steady beats that are easy to follow. Some very difficult types of music to use with geomats are Latin tempos, because there's so many layered multi-beat patterns due to the percussion that's used many times in Latin type music. So look for things that have steady beats, not really multi-layered or multifaceted beats. Makes it easier. Also finding the right tempo of the music that matches your step, so that it's not too fast that the progressions are so difficult students can't get to the, can't learn the steps because of the speed of the music. So make sure you want to select music that's kind of an appropriate tempo for students to be able to achieve the steps. Second thing is establish a base home cell. So perhaps start all of your dance steps from a specific cell, whether it's 5 in the center, whether it's 1 in the corners, or 3 or 7 or 9 in the corners. Begin all of your patterns from a base home cell. Once again, just like a base step pattern, this gives the students a place to go back to. When they get lost, they know, okay, eventually it's going to come back to 5, and then I can catch up with the next rotation. Or eventually it's going to come back to 1. I can catch up with the next rotation. Some key base steps that you can teach. Probably 2 of the most common base steps to use. In other words, the step that repeats itself throughout the dance before each new progression is to either use a side-to-side or a front-to-back. So if you see from the diagram here on the left, in blue shows the side-to-side. Side-to-side is a pattern where you start on 5 and you step left foot to 4, left foot back to 5, right foot to 6, right foot back to 5, and that repeats itself twice for an 8 count. The second most common base step is a front-to-back. So that's where you start both feet on 5, you step left foot to 2, left foot back to 5, right foot to 8, right foot back to 5. So that's kind of the most common base step. That would be good steps to use as a basic progression, that this one repeats itself after each new step that you introduce throughout your geomat pattern. Other types of patterns or steps that you can use in designing sequences that are very common are the X step, whereas the X step is the step, as by the name, forms a letter X. It's basically a left foot step to 1-5, then 9-5, followed by a right foot step 3-5-7-5. So left foot goes first, right foot, or you can do it vice versa, whichever way you introduce it. It's just one foot goes and the other foot goes in the X pattern. Triangle step. Triangle step is that your body steps in a triangle pattern. It can be either a forward variation or a backward variation. For this particular step, it's in 4 counts, so you repeat it twice for your 8 count. One of the most general ones, if you go left foot first, is that you step 5 to 1, and then the right foot goes to 3, then the left foot comes back to 5, right foot back to 5 in that pattern. So it goes left foot 1, right foot 3, left foot 5, right foot 5. The opposite would be to do the same pattern except you're stepping backwards. Left foot 7, right foot 9, left foot 5, right foot 5. Figure 8 step basically combines both triangle steps together in one 8 count, whereas the previous step, the triangle step, goes just the first half for 2 rotations. So you would do the triangle twice forward or the triangle twice backwards. The figure 8 does 1 forward triangle, 1 backward triangle. So it goes 1, 3, 5, and then it goes 7, 9, 5. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 5. And of course there's this 5 step in the middle. So it basically combines the 2 triangles together. The Z step is the one step that you would have to do. You have to do a little progression at the end. You have to add 2 extra counts to the Z step to get yourself back to home base, assuming home base in this case is 5. So the Z step, for example, goes starting on 5, you step left foot to 1, right foot to 3, left foot to 7, right foot to 9, then left foot comes back to 5, right foot comes back to 5. Then you can start into the next progression. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the 8 counts. And then you would do an additional step on 5 to complete the 8 count sequence with the Z step. So with that, you have to add an extra march step on 5 to get this step to be 8 counts to fit into your pattern. So those are some basic steps. When you're designing assessment, one of the best ways to design assessment in GeoMats is to do some kind of teach a series of movements or progressions and then have the students perform that, design a scoring guide that says how many mistakes they made, how many can they complete the sequence for 2 8 counts, whatever the case may be. So you design a sequence, you teach the sequence, students practice the sequence, you observe and assess them being able to perform that sequence. Another one is that you provide the students a list of all the different steps that you learn, have them design a sequence in which they teach to their peers. And so they design a sequence using particular steps that you've taught throughout the course of the unit, and then they design that sequence to their peers. With that one, you want to make sure you give them key parameters that challenge them and makes it worthwhile, makes them stretch themselves, and not just make a very easy sequence. Make it has to have this or has to have that in your progressions. The second one is then you want students to provide some kind of documentation of that. And so perhaps you give them some type of a GeoMat pattern. Perhaps you give them a blank square that looks like this on a series on sheets of paper, and they have to design that sequence. But they have to design some kind of pattern that goes with that. So those are some basic assessments, some basic movements, some basic patterns that you can use in putting together and teaching your GeoMat sequences.